Hey there, wake up. It's Means Morning News. Just after 11 a.m. on the East Coast here in Washington, D.C., I'm the newsman, Sam Sachs. Good morning to everyone. Forgot to wish you all a happy National Hot Dog Day yesterday. My bad. Hope everyone enjoyed it. And I hope everyone gets through National Heartburn Day today. Yeah, both holidays brought to you by Big Antacid. And we begin with disturbing news out of Mississippi, where a 16-year-old was killed while working a dangerous job at a poultry plant. The teen, identified as Duvon Tomas Perez, was from Guatemala. An investigation and autopsy into his death are pending, but reports are that he got caught in a machine while cleaning it. The processing plant is owned by the company Marjack Poultry, and under federal law, it was illegal for someone Perez's age to even be employed at the facility because of the dangerous nature of the job. The company, though, claimed it was unaware of Perez's age and that he was hired by a staffing agency. Marjack also blamed the incident on, quote, an unprecedented tight labor market. Subtext being, adults want higher wages for the dangerous work they're doing, so we're going to hire children instead. They don't know how much they're worth yet. Recent studies have shown that exploitation of migrant children in particular in the U.S. is widespread within corporate America. The Department of Labor reported a 69% increase in children employed illegally since 2018, and it's currently investigating more than 600 cases. The Economic Policy Institute charted the rise in child labor violations. It added that the number of minors employed in violation of hazardous occupation orders also increased 26% from 2021 to 2022, and it rose 94% if you go back to 2015. The rise is tracked with an increase in the number of unaccompanied minors arriving at the southern border. The invisible hand of the market is binding those children to dangerous work. Earlier this year, a Times investigation found more than 100 kids forced to do grueling work across 20 states. From that Times report, quote, migrant child labor benefits both under-the-table operations and global corporations. In Los Angeles, children stitch Made in America tags into J. Crew shirts. They bake dinner rolls sold at Walmart and Target, process milk used in Ben & Jerry's ice cream, and help debone chicken sold at Whole Foods. As recently as the fall, middle schoolers made Fruit of the Loom socks in Alabama. In Michigan, children make auto parts used by Ford and General Motors. And rather than protecting kids from this exploitation, state legislatures controlled by Republicans want to protect corporations from fines and lawsuits related to child labor. Iowa, New Hampshire, New Jersey, and Arkansas have all passed laws weakening child labor regulations. Another measure still pending in Iowa lifts restrictions on kids doing hazardous work. Similar bill has been offered in Minnesota, both being pushed by the state's business lobbies. What stage of capitalism is it when we're just reverting back to 19th century labor law and kids are being mangled in industrial accidents again? It's just capitalism. Republicans on a House Appropriations Subcommittee stripped out a trio of Democratic earmarks that they claimed were too woke. The measures totaled a measly $3.6 million, literally pennies to the U.S. government, but would have provided real benefit to the LGBTQ community and the general public. One was for an expansion to the William Way Community Center in Philadelphia. Another was for a transitional housing program at the LGBT Center of Greater Reading, also in Pennsylvania. And a third was introduced by Rep. Ayanna Pressley for an LGBTQ group in Boston to build affordable housing for seniors. Roll Call reported on the Republican opposition to those earmarks. Rep. Andy Harris from Maryland, quote, criticized the Greater Reading Center for offering services to children as young as 7 and argued that the Philadelphia Center promotes protests held by the Young Communist League of Philadelphia. Based. And he said that the Massachusetts project would discriminate against those who are not LGBTQ or allies. Another Republican on the panel, Andrew Clyde, said it was inappropriate to fund the projects and that, quote, that's a woke priority. Got a lot of things I'd like to say to Reps Clyde and Harris here, but instead, I'll yield my time to the gentleman from Arizona, NBA legend, Charles Barkley.
As I said last night, if you're gay, God bless you. If you're trans, God bless you. And if you have a problem with them, fuck you.
The governor of Connecticut called on state troopers to be fired after an audit revealed tens of thousands of traffic tickets were falsified. It's estimated that hundreds of officers could be involved in creating the estimated 26,000 fake tickets. The audit also found that another 32,000 traffic tickets had inaccurate information. Quote, those people should go, and I think their management should take a look at themselves as well, the governor, Ned Lamont, was quoted saying. State lawmakers plan to hold a hearing to investigate the matter later this month. The falsified tickets skew data to hide racial profiling in the state. The database that was audited is used to check for racial disparities in traffic stops, and most of the fake tickets were attributed to white drivers, making it appear like officers stopped white people in much higher numbers than they actually did. In reality, black drivers were stopped a disproportionately high number of times. Local news outlet KMVT reported that officers were also incentivized to falsify tickets because the more productive they appeared, the more eligible they were for federally funded overtime pay. See, this is what happens when you give the police more money. Hey, shout out to the kind folks at Working Class History who've given us access to their vast archives. We begin all the way back in 1883, when thousands of female telegraphers working for Western Union went on strike. They demanded equal pay for equal work with the men at the company, along with an 8-hour workday. Ultimately, the work stoppage was unsuccessful, but it was one of the first women's strikes for equal pay in the U.S. Jumping ahead now to 1936, when workers across Spain took up arms against the right-wing junta of General Francisco Franco and his capitalist allies, kicking off the Spanish Revolution. Following Franco's coup, the Spanish state collapsed, and major unions in the country called a general strike and started building alternative administrative structures in the power vacuum. Worker militias were created, and across wide swaths of Spain that were still under Republican control, new anti-capitalist societies were created. Workers and farmers took over the abandoned factories and land and ran them collectively. An estimated 8 million workers participated in building the new revolutionary societies across Spain in the 3 years that the revolution took place. And they came pretty close to actually building a lasting anti-capitalist state. Next up, 1970, the Salad Bowl strike. 6,000 farm workers, packers, and drivers in Salinas Valley, California went on strike, wreaking havoc on the summer lettuce crop. The workers were part of the Teamsters, and they wanted higher wages. The strike lasted for 5 days and led to crop failures and the tripling of the price of lettuce. Eventually, capital gave in to the workers' demands and agreed to the wage increases. Today, it's UPS that's on the verge of learning what happens when you fuck with the Teamsters. And finally, let's wrap it up in 1978 with more labor strife in the U.S. mail system. This week, that year, a wildcat strike kicked off among U.S. postal workers. With their labor agreement with the USPS on the verge of expiring, workers put forward demands, including wage increases, improved cost of living adjustments, no mandatory overtime, and a right to strike. But instead of getting any of those things, the Carter White House, the USPS management, and union leadership hastily came up with a tentative agreement that included None of those demands. And so, led by a group of postal workers at a processing facility in New Jersey, mail sorters and carriers went on strike. Strike lasted 5 days and involved nearly 5,000 workers, affecting operations at sorting facilities in D.C., Philadelphia, Chicago, Miami, and Los Angeles. It was the largest federal employee strike in nearly a decade. Ultimately, the tentative agreement was rejected and a new arbitrated one was imposed. More than 100 postal workers were fired for their strike actions, but most were later reinstated after a several-year campaign on their behalf. To learn more about any of these stories or other events that happened this week in working class history, follow the project on Twitter, listen to the podcast, and subscribe on Patreon. Back with more next week. So, no show tomorrow, which means we have to do the dirty work today. Let's get right to it. This week's Rich Dick is Tom Cruise. During the ongoing Hollywood writers and actors strike, you've seen a number of big-name celebrities on the picket lines. David Duchovny's been there, Susan Sarandon, Ted Lasso himself, Jason Sudeikis, Kevin Bacon, who of course is the link to every other movie star. You know who you haven't seen, though, and likely won't see on the picket for the duration of the strike? The king of cinema and operating Thetan Level 8, Tom Cruise. According to Variety, instead of showing solidarity with his fellow actors, Cruise is trying to get the union to make exceptions so that actors like him can promote the studio's new films. His new Mission Impossible movie just hit theaters. From Variety, quote, "The stakes are so high on summer films like Dead Reckoning Part 1, Barbie, and Oppenheimer that Tom Cruise asked SAG-AFTRA to allow movie stars to continue promoting their new films given the challenging theatrical landscape. The union countered by asking Cruise to join the picket lines, noting that having one of the world's biggest movie stars visibly in its corner would send a strong message to the studios. Cruise was non-committal, but offered to assist in other ways. Well, unless those other ways involve filming himself jumping out of an airplane before it crashes into David Zaslav's mansion, then that's a pretty weak response from Tom. The thing Tom doesn't seem to realize is that even though he's worth like $500 million, he has a lot more in common with his fellow working actors because ultimately he has to sell his labor to guys who are worth even more. But Tom is a company man, just like he's a church man, and both come with privileges. For example, as a dominant figure in the Church of Scientology, he reportedly was provided with slaves to do work for him. According to Radar Online, emails show that church members were required to put in thousands of hours of work to build things for Tom, including a luxury bus. Another job involved renovating his home in Beverly Hills. And one former church member said he was paid $1 an hour for the work. Ah, well, I can see why he'd feel awkward on a picket line then. Two things you should never ask Tom Cruise. One, do you support a strike? And two, where is Shelley Miscavige? Tom Cruise, he's this week's Rich Dick. All right, friends, before we get to the sunrise this morning, I need your help. Our sunny supply is getting low, so it's time for you all to get out there bright and early and capture the sunrise in your neck of the woods. Send it in to us at submissions@means.media. We'll play it on the air at the end of the show, and we'll give you credit. And if you sent a sunny a long time ago and it never aired, try resending it. Sometimes things get lost in the email. Series of tubes and all. All right, this morning's sunrise comes from Oregon. It was sent in by Laura, Peter, and Pert in Portland on top of Mount Tabor. Enjoy. Thank you, Laura, Peter, and Pert. Show's over. Thanks for watching. Thanks to the team behind the scenes. And please, if you haven't yet, sign up for Means TV. You can take advantage of our 7-day free membership right now. That means.tv. Also, subscribe to our YouTube and podcast channels. One day, capitalism will fall. Until then, we'll be right here. Except for tomorrow, the team has the day off. See you next week.